Hi YouTube, Darth here. I wanted to talk a little bit about the CTE, the community test environment, and I also wanted to play a little bit with the new Rush setup, so all of you get a video about it. Anyways, if you're not familiar with the CTE, it's a series of servers and a test client that DICE and the EA have provided in order to test changes in the game with the community. Rather than simply internally testing changes, they can now roll them out to the community in a safe environment that keeps risky things from landing straight in our laps in the main game. Since it's PC only, this lets them circumvent the certification process on consoles and make changes with quick turnarounds. Some of the changes that have already migrated to the live servers from the CTE are the high-frequency network updates, the reduced camera shake, and some other miscellaneous fixes. There are still a lot more changes to come. This last week's been pretty busy on the CTE. Early in the week, they've made some changes to Rush that I had been wanting to try out and finally got my chance last night. Rush is one of those tried and tested game modes from Battlefield 3 that kind of made it into Battlefield 4. I never really enjoyed it much in Battlefield 4 as most games seem to end in a horrible stalemate at the first few MCOMs. For example, Operation Lockdown Rush was a good way to simulate a conquest spawn camp. It wasn't much fun as a defender, and it certainly wasn't fun as an attacker. It wasn't that the game mode had suddenly turned sour, it had simply not been given the time to be properly implemented in Battlefield 4. However, now with the CTE, DICE has a perfect opportunity to test out long-needed changes with the community. And they've certainly not forgotten about Rush. Now I played Rush for a few hours last night, and I have to say that I definitely enjoyed the experience a lot more than I have since the launch of Battlefield 4. They've changed the position of the MCOMs on Zavad and Shanghai, the only two maps currently playable in the CTE, and they've given the preponderance of armor to the attacking team on Shanghai. The attacking team on Shanghai, for example, starts with a tank and an LAV versus the defending team's single tank. This setup actually reminds me a lot of Rush on Karkand in Battlefield 3. Now, I can't say for certain, but it seemed like the attackers generally had an easy time attacking the points on Shanghai. I'm kind of curious to see how much this changes on a 64-player implementation of the server, as the Rush CTE server is only 32 players. But for the most part, on both maps, it was difficult to defend from the attackers even when I was able to kill them in droves. That will probably change when there's more players covering each point. And to be honest, the players on the CTE are generally a bit more capable than your average pub player. And given how most BF3 maps didn't seem to stop the attackers until the very last few set of MCOMs, I'm actually okay with the attackers succeeding being the more likely outcome of the first few MCOMs. But Rush isn't the only thing that's changed this week. There have been some big changes to the way that visual recoil and suppression work. Firstly, visual recoil is the bounce that your sight does whenever you fire your weapon. In the live version of Battlefield 4, this causes your crosshair to bounce around in your sight and give you an inaccurate depiction of where your bullets will be going. This is countered by adding a laser as a secondary, as the laser will always show you exactly where your gun is aiming. Now, on the CTE, they've changed this by detaching the crosshair from the gun that they are in. The temporary visual effect looks kinda nasty, and they've already said that they want community feedback on which ones are broken and how the change feels overall. I'm a big fan of this change already, as the effect of the visual recoil before was simply your gun lying to you unless you knew the trick. As for suppression, in addition to dramatically decreasing the added recoil while suppressed, they've added a black border to the screen to indicate when you're being suppressed. I definitely appreciate the border, as a lot of times it was hard for me to know that I was being suppressed while I was in the middle of a firefight. I'd simply round a corner and wonder why my bullets were suddenly going into outer space. As for the decreased suppression effect, I have definitely noticed a change with hipfire, but I haven't been playing with enough ADS-reliant weapons on the CTE to get a good feel as to how the ADS recoil feels. I'm not too sure I like the idea of decreased suppression in the game, as I feel it's one of the mechanics that correctly punishes players who might otherwise run a gun. Decreasing the effect of suppression also takes away from the support class, but at the same time, I don't think a lot of players are playing support to suppress other players. Compared to Battlefield 3, I have felt like suppression was non-existent in Battlefield 4. So when you say you're going to decrease what's already there, I have to say, But not every change that makes it into the CTE goes live, so we'll see how the game feels and plays over the next week with that change. One other nice feature that made it into the game this week was the improved jet stall physics. In Battlefield 3 and 4, if you flew to the ceiling of the game, you'd get stuck there and float like a balloon. Your jet would stay there until it just felt like falling out of the sky. Now, on the CTE, you will fall and re-enter the combat zone as a real jet might pull out of a stall. So, as you can see, there are already a lot of good changes in the works, and some that have already made it to the live game. I'm really positive on the whole CTE setup for Battlefield 4, as I think it's already made some great changes to the game, and it's going to continue to bring great changes to the game as it goes forward. And honestly, I can't wait to see what they're improving next. I even heard a rumor tonight that they might be fixing the jamming issue with burst weapons. I love burst weapons, so that's very exciting news. But again, that's just a rumor. Thanks for watching, YouTube, and if you have Premium, I encourage you to sign up for and get into the CTE and play a few games, even if every now and again. As always, if you liked my video, please consider throwing it a like, and if you're new to my channel, subscribe for more Battlefield 4 videos. And I'll see you next time.